When liberals look at the people in ghettos, they say, racism, that's why they're not succeeding. And Sowell is saying, no, it's not. Because if you look at this group from the West Indies, they also came from the experience of slavery. They are also black, so they also face racism, and yet they do well. So it has to be something else. And then what Sowell is saying is that they were robbed of their culture, and so they picked up the culture of the people around them, and the people around them were rednecks. And if you look at the white redneck culture and the black redneck culture, they have a lot of the same values. They don't particularly respect education. They love Jesus. They use violence in their conflicts.
You know that I love you so much. Whoever you're watching this video, feel the love from the motherland. And I take this opportunity to say thank you to you for watching my videos. Kindly, if you are new subscriber, if you are returning, or if you are a new subscriber, thank you so much for being here. And this is the place to be. I think you will get what you are looking for from my videos. Stick up to the end. Now, there's a lot of things that black people going through, or American blacks are going through in white countries, or African in diaspora are facing. There's a lot of challenges they are facing in the white countries. And one of the challenges is making them not to be rich, even to reduce the wealth gap between black people and white people. And one of the things that is making black people not to be richer than white people is because of the historical legacy of slavery and colonization, systematic racism and discrimination, housing discrimination, we call it redlining, wealth inheritance, and integration, intergenerational disadvantages, the criminal justice system, economic exclusion. We have a number of things, challenges that is making black people in white countries less wealthy than white people. But now, there is a white guy here, I've said this. The problem of white people, or the problem of black people, is not racism, it's cultural. As a white man, he doesn't see the problem of white people as racism. I want you to watch this clip. And then after that, you watch this another clip why some white people are saying, what is the really problem of black people? Because a lot of them are saying it is not racism. Let's watch, and then we come back again and try to see if we can talk sense on these videos.
Hey, yo, black people, you listening? I'm not that thirsty of a person to just believe anything that somebody tell me, but I am thirsty enough to drink this entire bottle of hot sauce. So if you're able to prove to me why it is that there's a very good chance that what this man said is the truth.
When liberals look at the people in ghettos, they say, racism, that's why they're not succeeding. And Sowell is saying, no, it's not. Because if you look at this group from the West Indies, they also came from the experience of slavery. They are also black, so they also face racism, and yet they do well. So it has to be something else. And then what Sowell is saying is that they were robbed of their culture, and so they picked up the culture of the people around them, and the people around them were rednecks. And if you look at the white redneck culture and the black redneck culture, they have a lot of the same values. They don't particularly respect education. They love Jesus. They use violence in their conflicts. And even Ebonics, which is, black English, is actually all from the west of England.
Racism is a very big issue that, talking about it, I'm really trying to be careful to not say anything that will be insensitive. If opportunity is right here, they will give it to people of other race than African American and Africans too. So if there's a job that maybe have math requirement, I feel like they'll pick an Asian person, or they believe, African Americans will not dress appropriate, so they will pick another person. They will always pick people that are not black.
I would like to challenge the ideal that African Americans are lazy or that we don't have a good work ethic. I think there's this perception that, we're here, we're in America, how are we not doing better for ourselves? So
a myriad of reasons why I think poverty plagues the black community. And I guess would have to be honest and say that prejudice is definitely always a part of it. But the root causes may go deeper than that. If we go back to post-slavery, the blacks that stayed and bought property and held on to and developed that property ended up being the movers and shakers in a lot of places. And I think you're absolutely right that owning property gives you rights, but it also gives you an attitude. that if I can own property, I can do anything. And you can go to the socialist countries where they don't allow private ownership of property and see the root cause of poverty in those countries. I mean, it's just that simple. If you can't own private property, you're never going to be worth anything financially.
Wow.
But if you can own your own property, then you can own the right to develop that property, and you can own the right to use that property as leverage, and you can own the right to use that property as status leverage. But the real root cause, I think, of poverty in the black community is the poverty in the black community. If you're raised in poverty in a black community, then you tend to continue in that thinking. If you're raised in poverty and you think, I can't never get out of here, then you can't never get out of there. It's like faith in Christ. You know, if you don't have faith, then you're not going to believe. And I mean, I was raised poor. I dropped out of high school, joined the Army when I was 17 years old. First car I bought was $100, and I thought I was doing pretty good. You know, but now I don't think that way anymore because I had an opportunity to go to college. And I think I was in the Army, I had the same opportunity everybody else had. But of all the soldiers that was in the unit I was in when I started going to college, I was the only one that went to college because we had to do it at night on our own. And the rest of them would rather party than go to college. And I've taught a lot of black students over the years. Without fail, I'd say the number one thing that gets them out of poverty is the way they think and the education that they get as a result of the way they think.
Wow, you said some amazing things about ownership and property and being able to leverage it and different things. In one of the interviews we've done with someone, one of the interviewers, he made a statement that when black businesses was thriving on what is now Cherry Street, which was known back then as Rat Row here in the community, that urban development, I believe it was, came through, and now they're getting ready to expand, make the city better. So they went through the area where all of the black businesses, which wasn't the prettiest buildings, but they were something similar to hotels and restaurants and different things like that, and they tore a lot of them down. And they relocated everybody into what is called projects. From your knowledge and understanding, how did that mess with the person's mind, and does it give the person today to say, well, if we would have had more models of black business owners, more models of black leaders that was actually acquiring property, then we would probably have less crime rate? Is that something that is justifiable or a myth, or what's your opinion on that?
No, I don't think there's a myth to it because the urban development that started back in, I guess, in Roosevelt era, I think in many cases was just prejudice. You know, we're going to keep you in place. We're going to keep you in your place. So we're going to build a project and put you over in that project so we can control what you do. Instead of saying we're going to incentivize you and we're going to help you borrow money to buy your own business, we're going to help you develop your own business so you can hire people. Because, you know, poverty is the result of a lack of labor. If you work, you got money, you can buy things, and you get out of poverty. Wow. If you don't work, you can't buy things, so you can't get out of poverty. So, I mean, it's as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. If I don't help you learn a trade so you can get a good job, then I'm failing in my responsibility as a Christian, but I'm failing too as an educator and a businessman to train my students how to be productive and how to make money, quote unquote, make money. Because when you make money, you get out of poverty, and you can buy your own property, and you can buy your own house, and you can buy your own car. And there's another rub, I guess, is we like pretty things. So when you ride down the street and you see an old rundown house trailer that looks like it might be worth $1,500, and you see a $60,000 car sitting out in front of it with big mag wheels on it, you wonder where the education got lost there. How did the priorities get where they had to have a car, even though they lived in a trailer they probably couldn't heat and cool because it wasn't sealed? We see this. I mean, it's so common that you don't even have to buy bag wheels to put on your car. You can rent them for the weekend, just so you can look good. And looking good costs us. I mean, it costs us, and many times it puts us in poverty. A lot of socialist countries in the world drive you into poverty, and they keep you there with practices that are archaic. You know, like you go to Miramar. If you die in Miramar, you're going to be bankrupt unless you're a rich person, because they can't bury you without having a big party, and they can't have a big party without buying a big cow and roasting the cow and inviting the whole community, enemies and all, in to dine at your expense. So you may leave a loved one laying in a morgue for 2 or 3 years waiting for you to get enough money to buy a cow. So you can have a party. And we have this same problem here when we feel like that we have to socialize at our own expense when we can't afford it. When we'd be better off if we'd save that money and buy us a little piece of property and build us a house and, you know, plan down the road. You know, if you don't save a little bit of what you make, you're never going to get ahead.
Great. One last one on an article called TheBlaze.com, and there was another article, CNS News. One on The Blaze said that the war on poverty was the most expensive war there were, along with CNS News, where there was $22 trillion that was the word invested into the black community, which you said something earlier that really, if we look at it, it wasn't really investment, because it said it was given into welfare and arms. But you said something about if we had gotten money for businesses and things. So, but these articles said that by now the blacks should have already gotten out of it. They've gotten welfare. They've gotten they've been handed arms, so to speak, some handouts. $22 trillion worth of handouts. Does handout really change your life, or what is it?
We have had programs, and I don't know if they still exist, where if you had another baby, you could get more welfare. So we've incentivized a lot of young girls into having babies just so they could get money from the government. That does not get them out of poverty. That to a great degree just digs them deeper into poverty, because we don't teach them how to get out and stay out on their own.
Welcome back. As I may agree, the problem of black people is not only racism. Cultural too plays a bigger role, being robbed their culture. But personally, I may say the biggest problem is racism, because racism is what has created all these issues we see of inequality, segregation. Racism has done that. Cultural just plays a smaller role on it, because when you say you can't get rich because you have been robbed your culture, this white man claims that other groups like Asian are getting well because they are well-mannered and something like that. But I don't think that is the issues. Of course, we have a lot of rich black people, but general, I'm talking about the group of black people, all of them. Now, I think there's a number of systematic social, economic, and cultural challenges that black people or affect black communities. And all of this, when you trace it down, just you will come back to racism. And I believe some white people don't want to talk about racism. They feel uncomfortable. And that's why they will displace the fact that racism plays a bigger role in the problem of black people. Because when you talk about economic inequalities, I will draft it down, I will come back to racism. And the schools in a black neighborhood often lack the resources and funding found in wealthier white areas. This leads to gaps in education quality, which can affect future opportunities for black students. Now, why do we have these education disparities? It's because of that racism. Why should we have education disparities? And quality education may lead to future getting good jobs, but they will deny black community quality education, and this will determine how their future will be. This will determine how they will roam in the society, in the community. This will determine the group they will roam with in the society, because you lack education, you don't have good job because you don't have this quality education, so you will end up in the streets and you will become the problem as a black person. It's not because of the being robbed your culture. It's because of this segregation. It's because of this economic, or it's because of these education disparities. And it's because of racism that has led to these economic education disparities. When we talk about economic inequalities, why should we have economic inequalities? It's because of racism. is not because of cultural behavior or etc. etc. It's because of racism. Each and every problem that we talk about that is black people are facing will trace it down to racism. That is reality. Black communities face significant disparities in wealth, income, and employment opportunities. This can be attributed to historical factors such as legacy of slavery, segregation, practices like redlining, which limited access to housing and financial services. This is what we call economic inequalities. Is one of the problems that black people are facing. But all in all, when you narrow it down, you come to racism. Why should we have economic inequalities? See what was happening in Jim Crow law. Black people are denied first priority or even equal priority to get better jobs, better wage payment. Why should we deny that? Because we are black. Why will you make us last priority? Because we are black. Why will you make us slaves? Because we are black. So we will narrow it down to racism. Those people who are saying that racism is not black people problem, you are wrong. According to me, you are wrong because each and every point you make, you narrow it down to racism. Why will you rob us, our culture? Because we are black. Why will you not rob others? Because you are racist towards black people. So you cannot deny that. Nobody can deny the fact that racism plays a bigger role. It is the backbone of all this problem, according to me. When we talk about healthcare disparity, the problem is about race. Because black people in many countries, including US and other white countries, face disparity to access quality healthcare. Higher rate of chronic illness and lower life expectancy. These disparities are often sign of discrimination. And when we narrow it down, it's about the race. Okay? So I believe that apart from racism that we call systematic racism, we have a number of things like slavery and colonization, housing, redlining, but all of these, I narrow it down to racism. Now, when you talk about access to financial services, black people are being discriminated, okay? They are being denied maybe loans, or they are being excluded from home ownership, financial stability, okay? And this continue to impact the wealth and access to affordable housing. And why should you do that? It's because they are black. And that's what we call racism. So I think even the lack of wealthy black people, the wealth gap between black and white, it is being caused by racism. Because when you talk about colonization, in a country where colonialism played a major role, black people were often exploited for their labor and resources. When you talk about systematic racism, plays a lot of discrimination and equalness. When you talk about housing discrimination, it's because of the people of color, wealth inheritance. Black people are denied to inherit some things. One of our inheritance were taken by the white people. So criminal justice system plays a major role in this economic wealth gap or the wealth gap, because the people of color are being mass incriminated. So, and all of this, when I trace it down, I come to racism. I understand a lot of white people fear to talk about racism, because when you talk about racism, you feel guilty, you feel shame. When you talk about racism, like many white people may feel guilty or ashamed about historical and ongoing effect of racism. That's why they want to say that the issue of black people is not racism, because you don't want to talk about it, because you don't want to acknowledge or educate your others that it really happens. And they don't want to talk about racism because they fear of being wrong or misunderstood. Many white people fear saying the wrong things or bad. They fear the public backlash. They fear the discomfort with their privileges, because when you talk about racism, we will confront the privileges you get. When you talk about racism, that means that some white people may avoid talking about racism because they believe it doesn't exist, in a way that it is not as bad as people say. You will just accept, or you will just say it is not bad if you have experienced it. But white people haven't experienced that. Okay, so The fear of white people not to talk about racism is rooted in the mix of personal, psychological, and social factors, including guilt, shame, lack of knowledge, fear of backlash, and discomfort with confronting privileges. However, open and honest conversation about racism are necessary to address the systematic racism. It is important to create spaces where people can talk about the issues without the fear of judgment. And I think a lot of white people fear talking about this because they feel guilty. You don't have to feel guilty, because if you are telling me you are not the one who did that, it's our ancestors, why do you feel guilty? It's because you are still enjoying the privileges. And that's why a lot of white people will say racism is not the problem. That's why a lot of white people will say it's not as bad as they say. And they will bring out some other issues like cultural. They'll bring out some other issues like black people are not uncivilized. That's why they lack this and this. But all in all, we will track down to racism. So I think this white guy was wrong. You have heard other videos where white people are talking about it and other black people are talking about it. Why do black people are not richer than black people, or they are not in the same level? The poverty in black people and maybe other problems of black people, the main problem of black people in the society, they are saying it's not racism. Then what it is? What do you think on the comment section? Tell me. Peace out.